Hey y'all, welcome to Geek Freaks. I am Frank, and today I am with Frank Martin of Grimm Space. How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous because it's Friday.
Yes, it's always good to be on Friday. Can you tell us a little bit? You got Grimm Space coming out. Can you tell us about this?
Grimm Space, in a nutshell, is just a reimagining of classic fairy and folk tales into a space fantasy setting, kind of akin to Star Wars. So I had Jack and the Beanstalk, the first issue. That was in space, so he met a giant alien. I did another one for Pinocchio that I called P1 Nocchio. So instead of a robot,
Yeah.
instead of a puppet, he's a robot. So you kind of get the gist.
Yeah. Now you obviously got Jack and the Beanstalk, Pinocchio, and others. Is there anything you haven't done yet that you want to bring in from like the Grimm fairy tales?
Oh yeah, I got a whole lineup that I'm planning. I do 6 Kickstarter launches a year. I
Oh
usually
wow.
bounce all around between different series, but next year is going to be strictly Grim Space. So
There we go.
right now I have a campaign for the Golden Bird, which is a bit of a lesser known fairy tale,
Hmm.
but I'm going with the heavy hitters next year. So we got Three Little Pigs, Cinderella. I'm doing a Peter Pan story, not grim. It's not a grim fairy tale, but kind of the same vein.
Yeah.
So what else? I'm doing a Wizard of Oz again and a whole bunch of other stuff. So yeah, I'm rocking and rolling.
That's always fun. That's cool. I like that. I like that premise. That's cool. What inspired you to start this journey into both novels, actually, as well, and comic books?
Just storyteller. I've always been about writing, consuming stories. I think it started because I just loved fiction and media. So, like
Hmm.
everybody else, watch cartoons, movies, play video games, and I fell in love with the characters and I wanted to tell my own stories with them. So that's how I
Yeah.
got into fan fiction. And eventually I realized I can't really sell these because not my characters. And that's what inspired me to kind of do my own kind of original stuff, put it out there and have fun with it.
And previously, before this, you worked on Modern Testament, and you have a lot of mini series. Was there anything from working on those that you brought over to this?
Yeah, I mean the way Grim Space works is that every new installment or issue is kind of like a brand new project. It's a
Okay.
brand new story. Each one is a one shot, but they exist in the same universe. So Modern Testament was a similar thing where every story was its own story, but I didn't connect them. They're all separate. They were standalone. I wasn't worried about cameos and interweaving plot lines. One of the feedback I got from Modern Testament was people thought that would be cool if these
Yeah.
characters interacted and did that thing. So now that I'm doing Grim Space, I have a similar format. Every single story is its own thing, but it's all like the MCU. It's also part of this bigger world.
Yeah.
Pinocchio interacts with Jack and the Beanstalk, and I'm going to have a big crossover. All these characters come together at the end, so it's a lot more fun and it's a lot more challenging. To put all these puzzle pieces together.
Now that is a very big puzzle you're trying to assemble. Do you already kind of have that path laid out, or are you going as you
I
can?
do. I do. Right on the campaign page for the Golden Bird. Again, taking a note from the MCU, I have a launch schedule for next year, uh, kind of laying them all out, what order they're coming in, so that it's even though you could pick up any one and just start reading it without having known any of the previous stories, you will see some sort of flowing storyline if you go in order, which is cool. So yeah, I have it all mapped out, and now I'm looking to 2026 and beyond. So
Oh
yeah,
wow.
I'm planning far in the future with this, so I'm gonna milk it for all it's worth.
And 6 campaigns a year. My goodness, that's got to be a pretty full schedule for you.
It didn't start that way. It started with one, and then two, and then little by little, I kind of tweaked my system of fulfillment, how I build the campaign pages, stuff that I can, cut corners, leave this out, not put this in, which saves time.
Hmm.
And once you really trim the fat and you turn it into a machine, it's just at this point, I'm just kind of build a campaign, run it, fulfill it, on to the next one. So I'm in a pretty good groove with it.
Yeah, and honestly, the campaign looks solid. It doesn't look like it's rushed at all. It feels like it's a well-oiled machine, so it's welcoming.
I plan them far enough in ahead. I hope they don't look rushed.
Yeah, that's good. On this project, you're working with Dan. Is it Dan Scalisi? I want to say the artist.
Yeah.
How did you
He's my
meet
main
Dan?
Grimm Space artist. Dan actually got to me from a Modern Testament artist. One of my Modern Testament free comic book day shorts was done by a guy named Luca. He's Italian. He did a great story featuring the Leviathan, and I reached out to him when I was working on another anthology, or I was pitching a story for an anthology, and I was looking for artists, and I know he did a great job, so I reached out to him. He said, "Nah, I'm not really doing want to do comics anymore. I'm kind of into tattoos now." And I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." But
Yeah.
he said, "I got a guy who wants to be a comic artist, a fellow friend." He put me in touch with them, and we were kind of Dan and I have been working together ever since. We've done 5 different anthology short stories together. We did the Jack and the Beanstalk one together, and now he's doing the Golden Bird, which is 60 pages long. So he's
Okay.
my main artist on this series. He understands the characters. He really got the vibe down, that fun sci-fi tone to it.
Yeah.
So I consider myself blessed that he's on it.
That's cool. And then we got Dave Lentz. He's been on the show a couple times now for us, and he did your logo. Did he do any of your lettering as well, or is it just the logo?
I do the lettering myself, which
Okay.
I kind of take pride in, but
Yeah.
I don't consider myself a letterer. I do it because I want to have my own personal touch in my projects, but I'm not a designer. I have no design eye. I'm terrible in all forms of art. So when it comes to something that is important as a logo, I kind of turn to other designers
Yeah.
it's their specialty. And Dave, Dave, I was fortunate enough. Dave did this a couple years ago. He got the perfect vibe of sci-fi and fantasy into it, but he's getting pretty busy. So if you want to
Yes,
book
he is.
Dan, you got to call him like 3 years in advance.
Yeah, it's amazing how many different projects he pops up on too. Like you can tell he's in all kinds of different Kickstarter campaigns and across the board. Yeah, it's amazing.
He's very busy. I kind of contact Dave, and if I have like a tweak to a current logo, if I need him to do something that he's already done,
Hmm.
but I try not to bother him with something from scratch anymore because he's all over the place.
Yeah. Now, the lettering process can be tricky. Is there any little things you've learned along the way to make your lettering better?
Oh, I've learned tons along the way. At first, I viewed it as a necessity. If you're doing 6 projects a year, it's a big cost, and I wanted
Yeah.
to cut that. But over time, I really kind of grew an appreciation for what these guys do, their art
Yeah.
form, the things that they think about, and yeah, it's like there's a big learning curve to it. But I've been doing it a couple years, and I take great pride in the lettering, and I want to make sure it looks a specific way and reads a specific way. And furthermore, as a writer, I get kind of lazy with my scripts. I'll edit it during the lettering process. So
Oh
it's
wow.
nice.
Yeah.
It's nice having that advantage that I can then start at the beginning forming the story and then put the final touches in how a reader would actually read it.
Hmm.
If I'm working with a letterer and I don't like where the word balloons are, we might go back and forth 10 times before we settle on great placement for the balloons. But if it's just me, I could just kind of do it on the fly, and I'll bother me all I want because I don't
Yeah. Well, and it kind of gives you the option to be your own editor in that way, like a second pass, so that you can make sure it fits right.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'll give you a great example. Sometimes I'll write a line or a sentence and I'll cut it up and I'll put it into a word balloon, and there's a lot of empty space. And I'm like,
Hmm.
how do I fill this? Well, I could just throw another line in there that works with the dialogue. It's really hard to do that when you're working with somebody else to go back and forth all the time, and I don't want to aggravate them. So there's so much advantage to just being the writer as I'm lettering.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about Grimm Space, this started out with Jack and the Beanstalk. What was your inspiration of like, let me take this into space? Was there anything in particular that interested you in that?
It wasn't Jack and the Beanstalk in particular. I think I enjoy reimagining stories, just
Okay.
taking things and putting a spin on it, putting my own original take on it. I was talking about writing other characters. I've done that with some of my fan fiction. I did a Mortal Kombat reimagining where I took all of the characters and turned them, instead of ninja clans, they were gangs in New York City. So I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
that's kind of a different twist to it. So I just enjoy that kind of exercise, taking things that people are familiar with, that they know, and writing a story about that where they see all those similar familiar elements, but it's something wholly original and unique.
Hmm.
And it's fun, it's a puzzle, like I said.
Now, but there's just something with space, the sci-fi element that you're more familiar with. Are you like a Star Trek fan or something like that?
I love everything. I love
Yeah.
horror, I love fantasy. So yes, I was a big Star Wars guy growing up. I still watch all the shows. I'm into them. And so it's there's a lot of possibilities with space.
Hmm.
And I knew Jack and the Beanstalk one was originally one shot. It was just meant to be that self-contained story, but I always knew it had potential to blow up and be a whole universe of fairy tales. So placing it in space allows that infinite possibilities. It's full of
Right.
planets, it's got a lot of room to have space chases and ships. You know, if I tried to do Jack and the Beanstalk in New York City, it's kind of like if I wanted to keep the fairy tales going, I had to stay constrained within that city motif, which
Right.
obviously people have done. I mean, Fables is a hugely popular series, but I want to do something different, and space definitely allowed me the opportunity to really explode it to my full potential when I had that chance.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like the magical elements of fairy tales also translate to science of the science fiction genre pretty well too. So if you needed to like explain something away.
Yeah, we do that. I have that in the golden flying thing, the campaign that's currently going. So there's always this dichotomy, this balance between the science, the sci-fi, and the fantasy. So Jack and the Beanstalk story took place all in space. You know, it's on ships, it's on a space station. But now that I have a sequel, a follow-up to that story, the ship crash lands on a planet, and it's got a lot more fantasy to it. You know, they go to the woods, they encounter a
Yeah.
king, and it's I love the fact that this series can bounce back and forth. It could play in both realms at the same time.
That's a really cool idea is to see what it'll be like bringing them back to what they're kind of from. That's a good idea.
Yeah, so as I work through the series and as I have all these characters that I'm adapting, I get to make a choice. You know, is this going to be primarily fantasy, primarily sci-fi, a mixture of the two? So just to give a little hint, I have a troll in this story, big
Hmm.
troll, you know, classic fantasy thing, lives under a bridge, but it's a sci-fi bridge, so it's a light bridge. You know,
That's
like we
cool.
see in all sorts of different stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to find ways to put them in a blender and mash them all up.
Instead of like gold coins for the toll, he wants like credits and stuff like that.
Exactly. He's going to pay his toll in Bitcoin.
Yeah. Um, can you kind of give us a little bit of insight on the characters from the Beanstalk crew and what they're where they're currently at right now as they're going into the Golden Bird story?
Sure. Well, obviously, Jack and the Beanstalk, we got two main characters. We got Jack and we got his mom. And I needed them as part of this story. So Jack is Jack. He's a mechanic. His mom is not really his mom. It's
Hmm.
just a character everybody calls mom, and she's the
Okay.
captain of the ship. She's
Yeah.
their leader. And to round out the crew, I needed roles to fill on the ship. So I got Zeke, who's our big bad wolf character. He's kind of the security officer. He
Hmm.
deals with keeping them safe. Stilts is their wisecracking kind of business operations. He's the one that handles their connection to the government. They're a courier ship, so he deals with all their deals, keeps the ship running financially speaking. And I called him Stilts because he's eventually going to be a Rumpelstiltskin character. That's
That's
always what I
cool.
had in mind for him.
Yeah.
I'll get to that eventually, but where they're at the end of at the end of the Jack and the Beanstalk story, Jack gets his golden egg as he does in the original, but it starts to crack, and that's the cliffhanger that it leaves on. So what comes out of it? It's the golden bird, the golden flying thingy, and it causes mayhem on the ship and causes it to crash land on this fantasy world that they then have to figure out a way out of.
That's really cool. I like that idea that they're connected like that too. So it's less anthology. I mean, it can still be an anthology story, of course. Every episode can be different, basically, but there's still that connective tissue that keeps the
Yeah,
readers invested.
and I was very particular. I wanted to make sure, like the MCU, you can just if you've never seen an MCU movie, you can start watching Shang-Chi and know exactly what's going on. You don't
Yeah,
have to see the past 25 films or whatever it is to
yeah,
really follow up on this universe. But at the same time, if you do know all that history, you can see the Easter eggs, you can appreciate the cameos and where they're going with the story. So that's the kind of feel that I wanted to give to it. That I'm gonna do a Monkey King story. I'm gonna do a
cool.
Peter Pan story, and you'll be able to jump in even if you never read Grimm Space. But there are going to be characters and storylines of where they've been in the past, and they're going to drop hints and stuff. So you'll be like, I knew that, I read that.
Yeah.
So I'm having fun, kind of keeping the ball rolling as just having it roll over from one story to the next.
How often do you like just come up with a new idea and have to jot it down? Does that happen to you all the time?
So much because there's so many things that I could adapt.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a great example. This is way off in the future, but I've always wanted to do like a custom beer, contact a brewery
Hmm.
and have my one of my comics sponsored a beer. And it just for some reason, I forget how, it just clicked. I said, you know what? I could do a Johnny Appleseed story and have a
Oh
Grimm
yeah.
Space hard apple cider. I'm like,
Yeah.
that would be perfect. So yeah, I have things that pop into my head all the time that I want to give it the Grimm Space treatment, but it's hard to say, yes, I'm going to make this comic and I'm going to release it in 2028. So
Yeah.
it's very comics take a long time to produce, so it's weird getting excited about all these ideas and just having to hurry up and wait for them to
Yeah.
be made.
Hurry up and wait. I like that. Now, obviously, you've had many successful campaigns in the past with Kickstarter. What kind of benefits does Kickstarter provide you? Are you building a community over there?
I'm trying. It's hard because I have a little bit of writer ADD. So I bounce around all over the place. I write a lot of horror, sci-fi. I have a mystery story. I've done comedy. I'm all over the map. I kind of just chase whatever ideas I had, which people appreciate. They like that I'm following my passions.
Yeah.
But if you like me for my horror work, it's hard for you to transition over into something that's completely different. So I do have fans that say, Frank, you've never disappointed me, and I'll go with you whatever story you want to tell. And you know what that means? That means so much more than if I just had one series that they just followed over and over again. So, but at the same time, it's allowed me the freedom to do that. If I'm
Yeah.
working with a publisher and I have to get approval for every book that they put out, I wouldn't be able to just chase after whatever my writing whim is at that moment. So it's definitely has its pros and cons, and I would say overall it's been a huge net positive.
Yeah. Now, how do you engage with your fans? How do they give you your feedback? Is it through social media or Kickstarter itself?
All over the place. I would say my best contact with people that love to me or work is my mailing list.
Yeah.
Like so many creators, I keep updates with what I'm working on, what I've been thinking creatively, and all sorts of stuff. And they have that reply button, and I read every single reply that they have. They have a
That's cool.
direct shot to kind of seeing what I'm doing and giving feedback on it, which is great. Um, and of course, yes, social media is cool, and all those other avenues. Kickstarter itself allows comments and messaging, which people hit me up on. So, I mean, that's one of the cool things about the comic community is creators are so accessible, and we want to
Yeah.
reply to our fans. And even hate mail, I love getting hate mail. It's great. You care about what I put out that much to try
Yeah.
to like spend time writing something angry to me? Like, awesome.
It's
Take
like
it.
whenever I get the comments, it's one of those. It's like, thanks for the engagement. That helps the algorithms.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Doesn't matter what you say, just spell my name right.
Yeah, there we go. Um, so we have 6 campaigns a year. You're obviously busy making sure that you keep the fans happy. How much of your time goes to crafting the right campaign, finding the right rewards, figuring out what to tell your fans, while still working on the next comic or the next series of comics, really?
It's about stealing moments, you know.
Hmm.
I work a lot of time at night. I watch a lot of TV and I just throw in a show and I'm on my computer, adding rewards to a Kickstarter campaign or making graphics or lettering a book. It's about finding those moments where you're just like, I'm too tired. I just want to lay in bed and veg out and watch this show. That's an opportunity to do something else.
Yeah.
And I try not to waste those moments because if you want to do all this stuff, it takes a lot of work. So it's just a matter of, you know what, I write on my phone a lot, voice to text, because
Oh, that's cool.
if I have to walk somewhere to pick up my kids from school, from standing in line at the grocery store, I might write something a sentence at a time. So it might seem crazy, but I guess it's a little crazy to do this just in general. So might
Yeah.
as well just lean into it.
It's all effort first with the reward at the end. So yeah, you have to kind of gamble a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But you know what? I've been telling stories my whole life. I enjoy it. If I stop putting out works today, I don't think I could stop telling stories. I might as well just write them and then tell them to my kids. So
Yeah.
sharing them is cool. And so as long as I get to do that, I appreciate the work.
That was my next question for you. You have the 3 kids. Do you tell them these stories? Do you kind of get little feedback from them first?
Yeah, get feedback from them, and then they say no, Dad, and then they walk away, and then they break my heart. But
Can you
you know what?
explain why? While they're walking away.
Give me constructive criticism, please. Don't just.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know what? I include them in a lot of my stories. They're great inspiration. My first project this year was a book called Where the Nightmares Are. It was kind of a spin on Where the Wild Things Are,
Hmm.
and instead of a boy main character, it was a girl who loves horror movies,
Oh
and
wow.
that's my daughter. She
Yeah.
loves horror movies. So I said, you're inspired by this character. And she ate it up. She wants to read it all the time. She wants to show it to her kids. She shows it to her grandmother. Look, it's me. And I'm like, Yeah, that's you. And so putting them in the stories, getting inspired by them, it allows them to feel connected to what I'm doing, which is it wasn't my intent. I just had a great idea from them and I wanted to run with it, but it's definitely an added benefit to see them interested in stuff, even if it required putting them in it.
But it helps with that life work balance a little bit when they understand your passion for it and they get to see some of the rewards out of it too. So I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things I did is I created a little thank you card that just with my characters from all my stories, and I took that character, that little girl from Where the Nightmares Are, and I put her on the thank you card. So she's not just in a comic, she's also on the card that's being used to thank all of her backers. So it's just it makes her like feel seen a lot too.
Yeah.
That dad's doing his own dad thing, but I'm a part of it, and it
Yeah.
makes it that much easier. And it also makes that much heartbreaking when she's like, "No, I don't want to see the next story. It doesn't have me in it."
Yeah, that's true. But that's something she's gonna always remember, like, oh yeah, my dad put me in comic books and stuff like that. That's really cool. I think that's awesome. It's neat.
Yeah, we'll see once she hits puberty whether or not she's still my little girl that loves it that much.
Yeah, we'll see how teenage phase. You might be writing the horror stories differently in the teenage years. Talking about Grimm Space, what are your plans for this? I mean, how much farther out do you want to go with this one? I know you were talking 2026, 2028, but
So yeah, the launch schedule has one book slated for 2026. That's going to be that Rumpelstiltskin story that I was talking about. But like I said, I just came up with a Johnny Appleseed story. Would love to fit that into the schedule, and it really all depends on how people receive it.
yeah,
I'm going to do an evaluation halfway through next year to see how it's going, to see if maybe I want to spin my lineup all into a brand new Grimm Space, brand and keep it running alongside all my other titles,
yeah.
or just kind of do one here and there and kind of fit it in. I could go all day listing fairy tales and public domain characters I would love to put in this universe, but the fandom has to be there.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, as much as I hate saying that, it is true. In order to keep these things going, they have to fund, they have to grow. There has to be people who want to read them. And so, even though I think I will always continue Grimm Space, the rate of which stories are coming out might increase or decrease depending on the readership.
Completely understandable. And are you also working on novels at the same time?
I'm sorry, what was your question? What was that?
Are you still working on novels at the same time?
I've cut back a little bit on novels,
Yeah,
not because I wanted to. It's just it's hard to do everything.
of course.
Novels, they're a lot more intensive as far as the writing process goes. I really have to sit down. But you know what? And pump out these words as opposed to working on a page here and there like a comic script. But you know what? I'm trying to fuse these two passions together. So, for instance, to keep the campaign lively and fight off the dead zone, I did a poll where I asked my readers, what nursery rhyme do you want to see get in the Grimm Space treatment? And that was going to be a short prose story. So I actually wrote it today. The winner of the thing was Itsy Bitsy Spider. I did an Itsy Bitsy Spider story in space. So I'm trying to force myself into situations where I have to write prose, even if they're part of my comic universe, which is cool.
I just even as you mentioned Itsy Bitsy Spider, it's like there's so many times where it's like, oh, I forgot about that character, but then seeing them adapted into the universe, that's cool.
Yeah, and you know what? I can make them part of the Grimm Space universe, so I could throw in other characters from the comics into the storyline. I would love to do the other nursery rhymes. Mary Had a Little Lamb, Hickory Dickory Dock, and Jack and Jill were the other three ones. So
Yeah.
I never say never. I might do those ones next.
Yeah, there's the cow that jumped over the moon too, and that's already kind of spacey. So maybe an astronaut cow.
Too easy. Come on.
Yeah.
I got to give myself a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah. Well, it has been great meeting you. Where can we get everybody pointed to? I'm going to have the links in the description to the Kickstarter. Is there any particular social media that you can easiest for you?
I try to kind of curtail my social media these days, but I'm still on there. At Frank the Writer, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Again, my website is Frank the Writer 2, franktherwriter.com. And that's where my mailing list is that I was talking about. So if you're really interested, want to follow what I'm doing, signing up for my mailing list on my website is the best way.
The website is great too, by the way, guys.
franktherwriter.com.
Yeah.
I have a lot of my works listed on there, and I have some free short prose stories and some free comics just to kind of for people to get a taste of what I'm all about.
Yeah, definitely check out the website, guys. I'm gonna have all the links in the description so you guys can shop around. Thank you again, Frank, for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. It's guys like you that do stuff like this that allow me to talk about myself.
We're happy
fulfill
to.
fulfill my narcissism a bit.
Happy to anytime for sure. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.